The rusted key felt heavy in Vale's hand, as she stood before the weathered saloon that would soon become her workplace and perhaps her salvation. Dust swirled around her ankles, the arid Colorado air tugging at her travel-worn skirts as she stared up at the faded lettering on the sign. Silver Dollar Saloon, EST, 1872. It was 1885, and Gunnison, Colorado, was her last hope. Jake Blackett hadn't left his room above the saloon for 3 days, not since they'd put his brother in the ground. The letter in Kara's reticule promised employment as a cleaner and cook for the establishment. Signed by Matthew Blackett himself, a man who now lay 6 feet under in the cemetery on the edge of town. She squared her shoulders and turned the key in the lock, wondering what kind of man the surviving brother might be. The door creaked open to reveal a once proud saloon now fallen into disrepair. Empty whiskey bottles littered the floor, chairs lay toppled, and the long mahogany bar was coated with a thick layer of dust. This place needed more than a woman with a mop, it needed resurrection. "We're closed," came a gruff voice from the shadows. Jake Blackett emerged from a dark corner, unshaven and bleary-eyed. His tall frame seemed to fill the doorway as he approached, boots heavy on the wooden floorboards. "Don't know how you got in, but we ain't serving." Kara stood her ground, though her heart fluttered wildly in her chest. "Mr. Blackett, I'm Vale. Your brother hired me before his passing. I have his letter here." She fumbled with her reticule and withdrew the creased paper, holding it out with a slightly trembling hand. Jake's eyes, red-rimmed but startlingly blue, narrowed as he took the letter. He read it silently, his expression unreadable beneath his unkempt beard. "Matt always did have terrible timing," he finally muttered, handing the paper back to her. "Look around you, Miss Vale. This place is dying, same as he did. I don't need help. I need a miracle." "Or perhaps just a broom to start," Kara replied softly, her gaze steady despite her nerves. She'd traveled too far to turn back now. After fleeing Denver with barely enough money for the stagecoach fare, this job was her only prospect. "Your brother promised me room and board plus wages." "I intend to earn them." Jake ran a hand through his disheveled dark hair. "Matt's gone, Miss Vale, bushwhacked by the Callahan gang on his way back from Silverton. Whatever promises he made died with him." Kara felt her throat tighten. "I'm sorry for your loss, Mr. Blackett, truly. But I've come all the way from Denver with nothing but the clothes on my back and the skills of my hands. I can cook, clean, serve drinks if need be. I'm not asking for charity, just a chance." Something flickered in Jake's eyes, perhaps recognition of the desperation in her voice. He'd seen that same look in his own reflection lately. "1 week," he finally said. "You can stay 1 week. There's a small room behind the kitchen. If you can make any headway with this mess, we'll talk about something more permanent." Relief flooded through her. "Thank you, Mr. Blackett." "You won't regret it." His laugh was hollow. "I already do, Miss Vale, but my brother apparently saw something in you worth hiring." He turned away, reaching for a half-empty bottle on a nearby table. "The place is yours during the day. I'll be upstairs." As he climbed the creaking stairs, Kara surveyed the saloon with new eyes. The Silver Dollar had once been a grand establishment. She could see it in the quality of the woodwork, the ornate back bar with its cloudy mirror, the now dusty chandelier overhead. Whatever had happened to Matthew Blackett had clearly destroyed his brother's spirit along with any care for the business they'd built. Kara set her small carpetbag down and rolled up her sleeves. She would start with the bar. Hours later, sweat dampening her collar despite the cooling evening air, Kara had made noticeable progress on the main room. The bottles were organized, the tables scrubbed, the floor swept. She'd found cleaning supplies in a back storeroom and put them to good use. Her back ached and her hands were raw, but satisfaction warmed her chest as she surveyed her work. The sound of boots on the stairs announced Jake's return. He paused at the bottom, blinking in the light of the lamps she'd cleaned and lit. "Well," he said, his voice slightly less gruff than before. "You've been busy." Just getting started, Kara replied, tucking a stray strand of auburn hair behind her ear. The kitchen's next. I thought perhaps I might cook something for supper if there are provisions. Jake rubbed his beard thoughtfully. Storehouse out back should have some basics. Matt always kept it stocked. His voice caught slightly on his brother's name. Haven't had a proper meal in days. Then you shall have one tonight, Kara said with more confidence than she felt. She hadn't mentioned that her cooking skills were somewhat limited, but how hard could it be to prepare something simple? The storehouse revealed canned goods, flour, beans, and surprisingly, some relatively fresh potatoes and onions. She found a side of bacon hanging from a hook and sliced off several thick pieces. Within an hour, she had a hearty potato and bacon soup simmering on the stove, the smell wafting through the saloon. Jake appeared in the kitchen doorway, drawn by the aroma. "Smells like my mother's cooking," he said quietly. "I hope it tastes half as good," Kara replied, stirring the pot. "It's simple fare, but filling." They ate in relative silence at one of the newly cleaned tables, the awkwardness between them palpable. Jake devoured 3 bowls of soup and half a loaf of bread she'd found and warmed. "When did you last eat properly?" Kara ventured. Jake shrugged. "Don't recall. Days blur together lately." He looked up at her, really seeing her for the first time. "Why'd you come to Gunnison, Miss Vale?" "Not much here for a woman on her own." Kara hesitated, choosing her words carefully. "I needed a fresh start. Your brother's advertisement in the Denver Post seemed providential, running from something." His eyes were sharp now, assessing, "Aren't we all, Mr. Blackett?" She countered softly, a ghost of a smile touched his lips. "Fair enough." He pushed back from the table. "Good soup, thank you." He headed for the stairs again, then paused. "Matt would have liked what you've done with the place." It was the closest thing to approval she was likely to get. Kara's small room behind the kitchen was sparse but clean. She unpacked her few belongings and washed quickly at the basin before collapsing onto the narrow bed. As exhaustion claimed her, she wondered about the man upstairs and the grief that seemed to hang around him like a shroud. Matthew Blackett's death had clearly broken something in his brother. Whether it could be mended was another question entirely. The next morning dawned bright and clear. Kara rose early, splashed water on her face, and pinned her hair into a simple knot. She found coffee beans in the storehouse and soon had a pot brewing on the stove. The rich aroma filled the kitchen as she mixed biscuit dough. Jake appeared just as she was pulling the golden biscuits from the oven. His eyes widened slightly at the spread biscuits, fried potatoes, and the last of the bacon crisped to perfection. "You're up with the sun," he commented, pouring himself coffee. "Always have been," Kara replied. "There's much to do and daylight's precious." They ate breakfast with less awkwardness than the previous night's supper. Jake seemed marginally more alert, though shadows still haunted his eyes. "The saloon's been closed since Matt died," he said abruptly. "Almost 2 weeks now. Do you plan to reopen?" Kara asked cautiously. Jake stared into his coffee cup. "Don't know. Matt was the one with the head for business. I just helped run the place, kept the peace when the miners got rowdy." "Your brother must have valued your contribution," Kara said. "He wouldn't have made you his partner otherwise." "Partner." Jake's laugh was bitter, more like his keeper. "Matt always said I needed direction, that's why he bought this place after our cattle ranch failed in '79, said I was better with my fists than with numbers." Was he right? Jake's eyes met hers, surprise flickering in their depths at her directness. "About the numbers, yes, about the rest." He shrugged. "Matt saw what he wanted to see." "And what would he see now?" Kara asked softly. Jake's jaw tightened. "A man failing to honor his legacy." He stood abruptly. "I'm heading to the bank, got business that can't wait." After he left, Kara tackled the kitchen with renewed determination. By midday, it gleamed with cleanliness, every pot and pan scrubbed and organized. She moved on to the small office behind the bar, dusting shelves and straightening papers. A ledger caught her eye, the saloon's accounts, meticulously kept in Matthew Blackett's precise handwriting. She hesitated only briefly before opening it. If she was to help save this place, she needed to understand its workings. The figures told a clear story. The silver dollar had been profitable, very profitable, until 2 weeks ago. The cash box in the office safe confirmed the ledger's accuracy. There was money to operate if only Jake would reopen the doors. He returned late in the afternoon, his expression thunderous. "Bank's calling in Matt's loans," he growled, slamming his hat onto a hook by the door. "Gave me 30 days to come up with the money or they'll seize the property." Kara's heart sank. "How much do they want?" $500. Jake ran a hand through his hair. Matt leveraged the saloon to buy those new pianos and the fancy mirror behind the bar, said it would pay for itself in increased business. And did it? Jake sighed. It was starting to. Then he got it in his head to expand, wanted to add rooms upstairs, make it a proper hotel. Borrowed more money, ordered lumber and furnishings. His voice grew quiet. He was on his way back from finalizing those deals in Silverton when the Callahan gang caught him in the pass. Kara's mind raced. Mr. Blackett, Jake, the ledgers show this place was making good money before it closed. If we reopened, perhaps we could raise enough to pay the bank. Jake's eyebrow rose. "I need this job," Kara said simply, "and you need help. The saloon is clean enough to open tonight if you're willing." Jake studied her for a long moment. "You don't strike me as a woman familiar with saloon work." "I'm a quick learner," she countered. "And I suspect your regular customers are thirsty after 2 weeks without their favorite establishment." A reluctant smile tugged at his lips. "That they are." He glanced around at the now gleaming saloon. "Seems a shame to waste all your hard work." He sighed deeply. "All right, Miss Vale, we'll open tonight, but I warn you the miners and cowhands who frequent this place aren't always gentlemen." "I've dealt with worse than rough men, Mr. Blackett," Kara said, thinking of what she'd left behind in Denver. "I'll manage." That evening, as dusk settled over Gunnison, Jake unlocked the front doors of the Silver Dollar Saloon for the first time since his brother's death. He'd shaved and put on a clean shirt, though his eyes still carried the weight of his grief. Word spread quickly through the small town. By 8 o'clock, the saloon was half full of curious patrons, their voices growing louder with each round of drinks. Kara moved efficiently behind the bar, filling mugs with beer and pouring whiskeys, grateful for Jake's quick tutorial before opening. "Didn't know Blackett hired himself a new barmaid," commented a burly miner as Kara served him. "Pretty one, too." "Miss Vale is temporary help," Jake said firmly from nearby, where he was dealing a hand of poker. "And she's to be treated with respect." The miner raised his hands in mock surrender. "No offense meant, Blackett, just making conversation." As the night wore on, Kara found her rhythm, growing more confident with each transaction. The men were largely respectful, perhaps mindful of Jake's watchful presence. She caught him looking at her occasionally, something like admiration in his gaze. By closing time, the cash box held more money than Kara had seen in one place in a long time. She counted it carefully as Jake locked the doors behind the last straggling patrons. $72.15, she announced. Not bad for a reopening night. Jake nodded, looking more animated than she'd yet seen him. "If we keep this up, we might just make that bank payment." He hesitated. "You did well tonight, Miss Vale, better than I expected." "Thank you," she said, pleased by the compliment, "though my feet may never forgive me." Jake's laugh surprised them, both a genuine sound that transformed his face, erasing years of hardship for a brief moment. "Saloon work isn't for the faint of heart," he agreed, "but you've got grit, I'll give you that." As they cleaned up together, a comfortable silence fell between them. When they finally bid each other good night, Kara felt something shifting, the faintest foundation of trust being laid in her small room. As she brushed out her long auburn hair, Kara allowed herself to hope. Perhaps Gunnison would indeed be her fresh start. Perhaps the silver dollar could be saved. And perhaps Jake Blackett might find his way back from grief with a little help. The next morning, Kara woke with a new sense of purpose. She dressed quickly in her second-best dress, the blue calico that brought out the green in her eyes, and set about preparing breakfast. She was mixing pancake batter when a knock at the back door startled her. A young boy of perhaps 12 stood on the step, cap in hand. "Delivery for the Silver Dollar," he announced importantly. "From Jenkins' General Store." "I didn't order anything," Kara began, confused. "Mr. Blackett came by first thing this morning," the boy explained. "Said you needed supplies." Behind him sat a wagon loaded with provisions: flour, sugar, coffee, eggs, potatoes, several cuts of meat, and more. Kara directed the boy to bring everything to the kitchen, wondering at Jake's thoughtfulness. She found him in the office, poring over the ledger she'd straightened the day before. "You went shopping," she said from the doorway. Jake looked up, a hint of color touching his cheeks. "Figured we should be prepared if last night's crowd returns, and you can't keep making miracles with empty pantries." "Thank you," she said simply. "It was considerate," he shrugged, uncomfortable with her gratitude. "Business expense." His finger traced a line in the ledger. "Matt was good with these figures, always knew exactly how much we needed to bring in each night." "Your brother sounds like he was a forward thinker," Kara said, moving to stand beside him. "These plans for expansion were ambitious," Jake nodded. "Matt never did anything halfway. Always looking to the future while he trailed off, while you," Kara prompted gently. "I was always the muscle, not the brains. Good with my hands, good in a fight, but not much for planning ahead." He closed the ledger with a sigh. "Matt used to say I lived too much in the moment." "There's value in that too," Kara offered. "Seeing what's right in front of you instead of always looking beyond." Jake studied her face as if seeing something new there. "Maybe so." He cleared his throat. "I need to check our liquor stock before tonight. We ran low on whiskey." As he brushed past her, Kara caught the scent of soap and leather. She found herself wondering what Jake Blackett had been like before grief had etched itself into the lines of his face. That night was even busier than the first. Word had spread that the Silver Dollar was open again, and it seemed half of Gunnison County turned out to celebrate or perhaps to speculate on Jake Blackett's state of mind. Kara overheard snippets of conversation as she served drinks. Heard he nearly put a bullet in himself after finding Matt's body. "Bank's looking to take the place, from what my cousin at the telegraph office says. That new girl's a looker. Wonder where Blackett found her." Kara kept her expression neutral, moving efficiently despite the ache in her feet and back. Jake maintained his position at the poker table, occasionally stepping in when voices grew too loud or tempers flared. Once, he caught her eye across the crowded room and nodded slightly acknowledgement of their shared purpose. As the night wore on, a commotion at the bar caught Kara's attention. A tall, well-dressed man was arguing with one of the miners, his voice rising above the general din. "I said the lady should fetch my drink now, not when she pleases," the man demanded, gesturing imperiously toward Kara. "And I said wait your turn, Vaughn," the miner replied, his stance widening. "Miss is serving as fast as she can." Kara hurried over, sensing trouble. "Gentlemen, please." "I'll serve you both right away." The well-dressed man Vaughn turned cold eyes toward her. "Well, if it isn't little Kara Vale, fancy finding you here so far from Denver." His smile didn't reach his eyes. "Does Blackett know he's hired damaged goods?" Kara felt the blood drain from her face. Harold Vaughn, the very man she'd fled Denver to escape, her former employer whose unwanted advances had turned to threats when she'd rebuffed him. "How had he found her, Mr. Vaughn?" she managed, her voice steadier than she felt. "What brings you to Gunnison?" "Business, my dear." "Railroad business, though finding you is an unexpected pleasure." His hand shot out, grasping her wrist painfully. "We have unfinished matters to discuss. Let her go." Jake's voice cut through the tension like a knife. He stood behind Vaughn, his expression dangerous. "Now." Vaughn turned, not releasing Kara's wrist. "This is a private matter, Blackett. The girl and I have history." "Not in my saloon, you don't." Jake's hand moved to rest on the pistol at his hip. "I won't tell you again." Something in Jake's eyes must have convinced Vaughn of his seriousness. He released Kara's wrist with a dramatic flourish. "Another time, then." He straightened his expensive jacket. but you should know what kind of woman you've taken in. Ask her about the missing jewelry from my wife's collection. Ask her about the night she fled Denver like a thief." He tipped his hat mockingly and strode from the saloon, leaving a charged silence in his wake. All eyes turned to Kara, who stood rubbing her wrist, her cheeks burning with humiliation. Jake's hand on her elbow was gentle as he guided her toward the office. "Joe," he called to the older man who occasionally helped behind the bar, "take over for Miss Vale." In the privacy of the small office, Kara's composure finally cracked. Tears threatened, but she blinked them back fiercely. "I didn't steal anything," she said before Jake could speak. "That man Harold Vaughn, I worked in his household as a lady's companion to his wife. She faltered. He made advances. When I refused him, he claimed jewelry was missing and threatened to have me arrested if I didn't comply with his wishes." Jake's expression darkened. "So you ran." "I had no choice." Kara lifted her chin. "His influence in Denver is considerable. No one would have believed me over him." Jake was silent for a long moment. "Do you think he followed you here?" "I don't know. He's involved with the railroad. Perhaps he truly is here on business." She met his gaze directly. "I understand if you want me to leave. I've brought trouble to your door." To her surprise, Jake shook his head. "Seems to me you're the one in trouble, Miss Vale, and I'm not in the habit of turning away folks who need help." His jaw tightened. "Besides, the Silver Dollar needs you. I need you." The simple admission hung between them, more significant than either acknowledged. "Thank you," Kara whispered. "Don't thank me yet," Jake replied grimly. "Men like Vaughn don't give up easily, but neither do Blackett's." He moved toward the door. "Stay here, rest. I'll handle things out front for the remainder of the evening." After he left, Kara sank into the chair behind the desk, trembling with delayed reaction. How had her past found her so quickly? And what would she do now that it had? The next morning, Jake surprised her again. When she emerged from her room, still troubled by the previous night's encounter, she found him in conversation with Sheriff Will Kennedy in the main saloon. "Miss Vale," the sheriff greeted her, rising from his chair. "Mr. Blackett here has been telling me about your situation with Harold Vaughn." Kara glanced uncertainly at Jake, who nodded encouragingly. "I've been meaning to have a chat with Mr. Vaughn anyway," Sheriff Kennedy continued. "He's been throwing his weight around town since he arrived, making threats to property owners along the proposed railroad route. Seems he thinks his company's money gives him special privileges." "He's a dangerous man," Kara said quietly. "Most bullies are," the sheriff replied, "until someone stands up to them." He settled his hat on his head. "I'll pay him a visit at the hotel, let him know that Gunnison takes a dim view of harassment, and Miss Vale, if he troubles you again, you come straight to me." After the sheriff departed, Kara turned to Jake. "You didn't have to involve the law." "Yes, I did." Jake's voice was firm. "Vaughn threatened you in my establishment. That makes it my business." His eyes softened slightly. "Besides, I thought you could use an ally with a badge." The simple kindness of his action touched her deeply. "You're a good man, Jake Blackett." "My brother would disagree with you there," Jake replied with a hint of his old bitterness. "But I'm trying to be the man he thought I could be." The following days fell into a rhythm. During daylight hours, Kara continued to restore the saloon to its former glory, scrubbing, polishing, and organizing. Jake often worked alongside her, repairing broken furniture, fixing the loose boards in the floor, even repainting the exterior facade. They spoke little during these tasks, but the silence between them grew comfortable, punctuated occasionally by Jake's unexpected dry humor or Kara's soft humming. Evenings brought the clamor of business miners fresh from their claims, cowboys from nearby ranches, drummers passing through town. The Silver Dollar quickly re-established itself as Gunnison's premier watering hole, the cash box growing heavier each night. Harold Vaughn did not return to the saloon after Sheriff Kennedy's visit, though Kara occasionally glimpsed him on the streets of Gunnison. He would tip his hat mockingly, but kept his distance. His railroad business apparently required an extended stay in town, much to Kara's dismay. On Sunday, when the saloon remained closed in deference to local custom, Jake surprised Kara by suggesting they ride out to visit Matthew's grave. "I haven't been back since the funeral," he admitted as they saddled horses behind the saloon. "Couldn't face it, but it seems wrong somehow not to tell him about how you've helped save his place." The cemetery lay on a gentle rise overlooking the town, the San Juan Mountains creating a majestic backdrop to the west. Matthew Blackett's grave was marked by a simple wooden cross, though Jake mentioned that a proper stone was being carved in Denver. Jake stood silently before the grave for a long moment, hat in hand. Kara hung back, giving him privacy for his grief, but he beckoned her forward. "Matt would have liked you," he said quietly. "He always said I needed someone with sense to balance my impulsiveness. Were you close?" Kara asked, placing a small bunch of wildflowers she'd gathered at the base of the cross. "Not always," Jake admitted. 4 years between us meant we saw the world differently. Matt was cautious, calculating. I was all action, no thought, got me in plenty of trouble growing up. A faint smile touched his lips. "But he always bailed me out even when our pa said I needed to learn my lesson the hard way, and your mother died when I was 12. Fever took her." Jake's eyes grew distant with memory. She was like Matt, practical, forward-thinking. Always trying to civilize pa and me. "And did she succeed?" Kara asked softly. Jake's laugh was gentle. "With Matt, yes. With me and pa," he shrugged. "We were too wild, I guess. Pa died in '77, got thrown from a horse during a thunderstorm. After that, it was just me and Matt. He took over the ranch, tried to make a go of it." His expression darkened. "Then the winter of '79 hit, lost most of our cattle to the cold. Matt sold what was left and decided Gunnison was the future mining town on the rise," he said. "He was right about that," Kara observed. "The town is growing every day." "Matt was usually right," Jake sighed. "He built the Silver Dollar from nothing, made it the best saloon in 3 counties, and he trailed off. And you kept it running," Kara finished for him. "You were partners, each with your strengths." Jake looked at her, surprise and something else warming his eyes. "That's a kind way of seeing it." "It's the truth," Kara insisted. "From what I've seen in the ledgers and heard from your customers, the Silver Dollar succeeded because of both Blackett brothers, not just one." They stood in companionable silence for a few moments longer before remounting their horses. As they rode back toward town, Jake pointed out landmarks: the ridge where the Ute Indians had once camped before being forced onto reservations, the creek where he'd panned for gold as a young man, finding nothing but wet feet for his troubles, the meadow where wildflowers bloomed spectacularly in early summer. Kara found herself watching Jake more than the scenery, noticing how the tension he normally carried seemed to ease outside the confines of the town. His shoulders relaxed, his gestures became more expansive, and occasionally he even laughed, a rich, deep sound that made her heart beat faster each time she heard it. By the time they returned to the saloon, something had shifted between them. The shared visit to Matthew's grave had bridged some invisible gap, turning employer and employee into something closer to friends. That night after closing, as they sat at a table counting the day's earnings, Jake looked up suddenly. "Why Denver?" he asked. "Why did you go there in the first place?" Kara set down the coins she'd been stacking. "I was born in a small farming community near Kansas City. When my parents died of typhoid in '79, there wasn't much left for me there. I was 18, unmarried with few prospects." She twisted her hands in her lap. "A family friend suggested Denver, said a city that size would have opportunities for an educated young woman. I found work as a shop girl initially, then as Mrs. Vaughn's companion when her health began to fail." "And Vaughn took advantage of his wife's illness," Jake concluded, his expression hardening. Kara nodded. "He's not a good man, Jake. His railroad business involves more threats than legitimate negotiations, from what I overheard in their home." "The sheriff's keeping an eye on him," Jake assured her, "and so am I." He hesitated, then reached across the table to cover her hand with his. "You're safe here, Kara, I promise you that." His touch sent warmth spreading through her. "Thank you," she said softly. Their gazes held for a heartbeat longer than necessary before Jake cleared his throat and withdrew his hand. "We should get some rest," he said, gathering the money into the cash box. "Tomorrow's likely to be busy again." As Kara lay in bed that night, she found herself replaying the moment of Jake's hand on hers, the intensity in his blue eyes as he promised her safety. For the first time since fleeing Denver, she truly believed she might have found a haven and perhaps something more. The following week brought steady business to the Silver Dollar. Word spread about the quality of Kara's cooking, and soon the saloon was serving simple but hearty meals at midday as well as drinks in the evening. Jake hired a local boy, Timmy Jenkins, to help with heavier tasks, allowing Kara to focus on the kitchen during the day and bartending at night. Each evening, Jake seemed to emerge further from his shell of grief. He began to circulate more among the customers, sharing stories and occasional laughter. Sometimes Kara would catch him watching her with an expression she couldn't quite decipher, something between wonder and confusion, as if she were a puzzle he was trying to solve. Late one night, after a particularly profitable evening, Jake approached her as she wiped down the bar. "We need to talk about your position here," he said, his voice serious. Kara's heart dropped. Despite their growing closeness, perhaps he'd decided she brought too much risk with Vaughn still in town. "I understand," she began, but he cut her off with a raised hand. "You've been working yourself to exhaustion," he continued. "Cooking, cleaning, serving, it's too much for one person. I'd like to hire a girl from town to help with the cleaning, leave you free to focus on the kitchen and the bar." Relief flooded through her. "Oh, that's very considerate, but I don't mind the work." "I mind," Jake said firmly. "Matt would have my hide if he knew I was working you this hard." A shadow crossed his face at the mention of his brother, but it passed quickly. "Besides, we can afford it now. The banks, pleased with our payments, even hinted they might be willing to reconsider the loan terms if we continue as we are." "That's wonderful news," Kara exclaimed. "Your brother would be proud of what you've accomplished." Jake's expression softened. "What we've accomplished," he corrected. "This place wouldn't be running without you, Kara." The sound of her name on his lips sent a pleasant shiver through her. He used it more frequently now in private moments like this one. "There's something else," Jake continued, running a hand through his hair in a gesture she'd come to recognize as nervousness. "The Founders' Day dance is next Saturday. I thought, that is, if you're interested, we might attend." Together? The invitation caught her completely off guard. "As colleagues?" she asked cautiously, a faint blush colored Jake's tan cheeks. "As whatever you'd like to call it. I just thought you might enjoy an evening away from the saloon, and I'd like to escort you." Kara's heart raced. "I'd like that very much," she said softly. Jake's smile transformed his face, erasing the last traces of the brooding man she'd first encountered. "Good, that's good." The moment was broken by a crash from outside, followed by raised voices. Jake's expression immediately shifted to alertness. "Stay here," he ordered, moving quickly to the door. Kara, never one to follow orders blindly, was close behind him as he stepped onto the boardwalk. In the street, two men were engaged in a heated argument, one of them Harold Vaughn, the other a local rancher named Miller whose property lay along the proposed railroad route. "You can threaten me all you want, Vaughn," Miller was shouting, "but that land's been in my family since before you railroad men ever set eyes on Colorado." "Your sentimentality is touching but ultimately irrelevant," Vaughn replied coldly. "The railroad will have that right of way whether you sell willingly or not." "Is that a threat?" Miller demanded, his hand moving toward his hip. "Merely a statement of fact," Vaughn said. His eyes shifted to where Jake and Kara stood watching, and a slow smile spread across his face. "Ah, the gallant Mr. Blackett and his little runaway, how charming." Jake stepped forward, positioning himself slightly in front of Kara. "This doesn't concern us, Vaughn. Take your business dealings elsewhere. But it does concern you, Blackett. Your saloon sits on land the railroad has identified as ideal for a depot." Vaughn's smile widened. "I was planning to approach you more, Diplomatically, but since we're all friends here, I'll be direct. The Rocky Mountain Railroad Company wants your property. Jake's stance stiffened. The silver dollar isn't for sale. Everything has a price, Vaughn countered, even sentiment. He glanced meaningfully at Kara, and everyone has secrets worth protecting. Perhaps we could discuss terms privately. Jake's hand moved to his pistol. Get out of here, Vaughn, before I forget I'm a civilized man. Something dangerous flashed in Vaughn's eyes, but he merely adjusted his hat. Think about it, Blackett. The railroad is coming to Gunnison whether you like it or not. Better to profit from progress than be crushed beneath it. He nodded curtly to Miller. That goes for you as well. As Vaughn walked away, Kara released a breath she hadn't realized she was holding. Jake turned to her, his expression grim. I should have guessed he wasn't just here for railroad business, he said quietly. He wants the saloon. Would you consider selling? Kara asked, watching his face carefully. Jake's response was immediate and vehement. Never. This place was Matt's dream. I'll be damned if I let some railroad shark take it. He ran a hand through his hair. But Vaughn's right about one thing: the railroad is coming. And it typically gets what it wants. That night, Kara found sleep elusive. Vaughn's appearance in her life had been troubling enough. Now his interest in the silver dollar added a new layer of complication. She had no doubt he would use her past, fabricated though his accusations were, as leverage against Jake. The Founders' Day dance arrived bright and clear, the late May sunshine warming the streets of Gunnison. Kara spent longer than usual preparing, washing her hair with the rose-scented soap she'd been saving for a special occasion, and pressing her best dress, a forest green creation with delicate lace at the collar and cuffs. She twisted her auburn hair into an elegant knot, securing it with the mother-of-pearl combs that had been her mother's. When she emerged from her room, Jake was waiting in the main saloon, dressed in a crisp white shirt and dark suit that made him look nothing like the grieving, disheveled man she'd first encountered. He'd trimmed his beard and slicked back his dark hair, revealing more clearly the strong line of his jaw and the surprising elegance of his features. He stared at her for a long moment before finding his voice. You look beautiful, Kara. Thank you, she replied, feeling a blush warm her cheeks. You clean up rather well yourself. Jake offered his arm with a formality that made her smile. Shall we? The town hall had been transformed for the occasion, bunting and lanterns creating a festive atmosphere. A small band played on a raised platform at one end, while tables laden with food and punch lined the other. It seemed all of Gunnison had turned out for the celebration, the room filled with faces both familiar and new. Jake kept his hand at the small of Kara's back as they moved through the crowd, nodding greetings to the saloon's regular patrons. Sheriff Kennedy approached, tipping his hat to Kara. Miss Vale, Blackett, fine evening for a dance. Indeed it is, Sheriff, Kara agreed. Have you had any further dealings with Mr. Vaughn? Kennedy's expression darkened slightly. That man's walking a fine line between aggressive business and outright intimidation. I've warned him, but he's got powerful friends in Denver. He glanced at Jake. Heard he's got his eye on your place. He can keep looking, Jake replied firmly. The silver dollar isn't going anywhere. The conversation was interrupted by the mayor calling for attention to officially open the dance. As the band struck up a lively tune, Jake turned to Kara with a slight bow. Would you do me the honor? He asked, extending his hand. Kara placed her hand in his, her heart quickening at his touch. I should warn you, I'm not particularly accomplished at dancing. Jake's smile was warm. Neither am I, we can stumble together. But they didn't stumble. Jake led with surprising grace, guiding Kara around the floor with a gentle but confident hand at her waist. They moved in sync as if they'd danced together for years, their bodies finding a natural harmony that made Kara's pulse race. You lied, she accused playfully as they turned. You dance beautifully. My mother's influence, Jake admitted. She insisted both Matt and I learn properly, said no Blackett boy of hers would shuffle around a dance floor like a bear with sore feet. Kara laughed, delighted by this glimpse into his past. She sounds wonderful. She was, Jake said softly. His eyes, so blue in the lamplight, held Kara's with an intensity that made her breath catch. She would have liked you very much. The music shifted to a slower waltz. Jake drew her slightly closer, his hand warm and steady at her back. Kara was acutely aware of the firmness of his shoulder beneath her palm, the scent of soap and leather that she'd come to associate with him, the way his eyes never left her face as they moved together. "People are watching us," she murmured, noting the curious glances from those around them. "Let them," Jake replied, his voice low. "I'm not ashamed to be seen dancing with the most beautiful woman in Gunnison." The simple compliment warmed her more than elaborate flattery ever could. "Jake Blackett, I do believe you're becoming a charmer." His smile was slightly crooked. "Not by nature, but you bring it out in me somehow." As the evening progressed, they danced several more times, pausing occasionally to sample the refreshments or speak with townsfolk. Kara found herself relaxing into the role of Jake's companion, enjoying the easy way he kept her at his side, his hand often finding the small of her back or her elbow in a gesture both protective and possessive. It was during one such moment, as they stood near the punch bowl in conversation with the banker and his wife, that Kara noticed Harold Vaughn enter the hall. His cold gaze swept the room, settling on her and Jake with an expression that sent a chill down her spine. Jake felt her tense and followed her gaze. His arm tightened around her waist. "Ignore him," he murmured close to her ear. "This is our evening." But Vaughn was not so easily dismissed. As the banker moved away, Vaughn approached, his smile sharp as a knife. "Miss Vale." "Blackett. How domestic you look together." His gaze raked Kara from head to toe. "Green becomes you, my dear, though I prefer you in blue like that lovely sapphire necklace of my wife's that went missing." Jake's body went rigid beside her. "That's enough, Vaughn." "I was merely reminiscing," Vaughn replied innocently. "But perhaps this isn't the venue for such conversations. I'd still like to discuss business with you, Blackett. The railroad's offer is generous, far more than that saloon is worth." "And I've already declined," Jake said firmly. "Now, if you'll excuse us." As they turned away, Vaughn called after them, "Ask her about the letters, Blackett. The ones she stole from my desk before fleeing Denver. Very interesting reading, especially for certain investors in the railroad." Kara felt the blood drain from her face. The letters. She'd almost forgotten them in the rush of recent events. Tucked into the lining of her carpet bag were indeed several documents she'd taken from Vaughn's study, proof of his illegal dealings and bribes to government officials. Jake led her outside onto the small porch of the town hall, away from curious eyes. "What was he talking about, Kara?" She took a deep breath. "Before I left Denver, I took some papers from Vaughn's study, evidence of corruption, of bribes paid to officials for railroad contracts. I thought they might protect me if he came after me with his accusations." Jake's expression was unreadable in the dim light. "Why didn't you tell me?" "At first, because I didn't know if I could trust you," Kara admitted. "Later, I didn't want to involve you in my troubles more than you already were." Jake was silent for a long moment, his gaze fixed on the distant mountains barely visible in the moonlight. "We should show those letters to Sheriff Kennedy," he finally said. "Vaughn's threats go beyond just you and me now. Half the county's being pressured by the railroad." Relief flooded through Kara at his response. No accusations, no anger, just practical next steps. "You're not upset that I kept this from you?" Jake turned to her, his expression softening. "We all have secrets, Kara. God knows I've kept my share." He reached out to brush a stray lock of hair from her face, his fingers lingering against her cheek. "But I'm asking you now, no more secrets between us. Whatever comes, we face it together." The tenderness in his touch, the warmth in his eyes, Kara felt something shift inside her, a final wall crumbling. "Together," she agreed softly. For a heartbeat, they stood suspended in the moment, Jake's hand still cradling her face. Then slowly, giving her every chance to pull away, he lowered his head and brushed his lips against hers. The kiss was gentle, questioning, a whisper of possibility. When he started to draw back, Kara rose on her toes and pressed her lips more firmly to his, her hands finding purchase on his shoulders. Jake responded immediately, his arm encircling her waist to draw her closer, his kiss deepening with newfound certainty. When they finally parted, both slightly breathless, Jake rested his forehead against hers. "I've been wanting to do that since you scrubbed my bar to a shine," he confessed with a soft laugh. "I've been waiting for you to do it," Kara replied, a smile curving her lips. The sound of the band striking up another tune drifted from inside. "Should we return to the dance?" Jake asked, though he made no move to release her. Kara considered for a moment. "I think I'd rather go home. We have letters to retrieve and plans to make." Jake's smile was warm with promise. "Home it is, then." They walked back to the Silver Dollar arm in arm, the night air cool against their flushed skin. The saloon was dark and quiet, a stark contrast to its usual evening bustle. As Jake lit the lamps, Kara went to her small room to retrieve the letters from their hiding place. The documents were exactly as she remembered correspondence between Vaughn and various officials, detailing payments for favorable land decisions and routing approvals. In one particularly damning letter, Vaughn outlined a plan to force reluctant landowners to sell through a combination of legal harassment and unfortunate accidents. Jake read through them with growing anger. "This is more than just aggressive business tactics," he said, setting down the last letter. "This is criminal." "Will Sheriff Kennedy act on these?" Kara asked. "He's an honest man," Jake replied, "and these letters mention specific officials he can contact to verify." "It might take time, but this could stop Vaughn in his tracks." "He won't go quietly," Kara warned. "He's a dangerous man when cornered." Jake's expression hardened. "So am I." He gathered the letters carefully. "We'll take these to Kennedy first thing tomorrow, for now." His voice softened as he looked at her. "It's been quite an evening." Kara's heart quickened at the warmth in his gaze. "Yes, it has." He stepped closer, his hand coming up to cup her cheek once more. "Kara, I need you to know something. What I feel for you, it isn't gratitude for saving the saloon or just attraction, though God knows there's plenty of that." His thumb traced the line of her jaw. "I think I'm falling in love with you." The simple, honest words stole her breath. "Jake." "You don't need to say anything," he assured her quickly. "I just wanted you to know where I stand. Whatever happens with Vaughn and the railroad, that won't change." Kara placed her hand over his. "I think I'm falling in love with you too," she said softly. "It terrifies me and exhilarates me all at once." Jake's smile was radiant as he drew her into his arms, his kiss deeper and more passionate than before. Kara melted against him, her arms twining around his neck, her body fitting perfectly against his. When they finally parted, both breathing heavily, Jake pressed his forehead to hers. "I should let you rest," he said reluctantly. "Tomorrow may bring challenges we can't foresee." "Stay," Kara whispered, surprising herself with her boldness. "Not for, I mean, just to be close." "I don't want to be alone tonight." Jake's eyes searched hers, finding nothing but certainty. "Are you sure?" "I've never been more sure of anything," she replied. They settled together on the small bed in Kara's room, Jake's arm around her as she rested her head on his chest, listening to the steady beat of his heart. They spoke in low voices of inconsequential things, childhood memories, favorite books, dreams long deferred, until Kara's eyes grew heavy with sleep. The last thing she remembered before drifting off was Jake's lips brushing her forehead and his whispered, "Sleep well, my Kara." Morning brought clarity and purpose. They rose early, Jake returning briefly to his own room to change while Kara prepared a simple breakfast. The easy domesticity of the moment, Jake pouring coffee while Kara fried eggs, their movements in harmony, felt right in a way neither had expected. "Sheriff Kennedy usually takes breakfast at Martha's Cafe around 8, Jake said as they ate. "We should catch him there, away from prying eyes." Kara nodded, mentally preparing herself for the confrontation that would inevitably follow. "What do you think Vaughn will do when he's exposed?" Jake's expression was grim. "Men like that rarely accept defeat gracefully. We'll need to be careful." They walked to Martha's cafe together, the letters safely stowed inside Jake's jacket. As predicted, Sheriff Kennedy was at his usual table by the window, working his way through a stack of flapjacks. "Morning, Sheriff," Jake greeted him, sliding into the chair across from him. Kara took the seat beside Jake. "Mind if we join you?" Kennedy raised an eyebrow at their early appearance but nodded. "Blackett, Miss Vale, what brings you out at this hour? Figured you'd be sleeping in after the dance." "We've come across some information you should see," Jake said in a low voice, glancing around to ensure they weren't overheard. He withdrew the letters and passed them to the sheriff. Regarding Harold Vaughn and his railroad business, Kennedy's expression grew increasingly serious as he scanned the documents. When he'd finished, he carefully folded them and tucked them into his own pocket. "This is mighty troubling," he said quietly. "Explains a lot about Vaughn's confidence. Where did you get these?" Kara straightened her shoulders. "I took them from his study in Denver. He was my employer. I worked as his wife's companion. When I discovered what kind of man he was, both personally and professionally, I felt I needed protection." Kennedy nodded slowly. "Smart thinking, Miss Vale, though dangerous." He turned to Jake. "You realize Vaughn won't take this lying down, man like that with his back to the wall." "We know," Jake replied, his hand finding Kara's under the table. "But we couldn't let him continue threatening half the county." "No, you couldn't," Kennedy agreed. He drained his coffee cup and stood. "I'll send telegrams to some contacts in Denver, verify these accusations. In the meantime, I suggest you both stay alert. I'll keep an eye on Vaughn, but I can't arrest him on these letters alone." As they left the cafe, Kara felt a weight lifting from her shoulders. At least now Vaughn's threats had been brought into the open. Whatever came next, they wouldn't face it alone. The day passed quietly at the Silver Dollar. They had hired a local girl, Beth Wilson, to help with cleaning, allowing Kara to focus on preparing for the evening's business. Jake spent the afternoon checking their liquor stocks and making repairs to a broken table. The normalcy of their tasks belied the tension they both felt, waiting for Vaughn's next move. It came just before opening time. Jake was behind the bar, organizing glasses, when the front door swung open. Harold Vaughn stood in the doorway, flanked by two rough-looking men Kara hadn't seen before. "Blackett," Vaughn said, his voice cold. "I believe you have something that belongs to me." Jake straightened, his hand moving subtly toward the shotgun kept beneath the bar. "This is private property, Vaughn. We're not open yet. I'm not here for a drink." Vaughn stepped further into the saloon, his companions spreading out to either side. "Miss Vale took some papers from my home in Denver. I want them returned. Now." "I don't know what you're talking about," Jake replied evenly, though his eyes had hardened to ice. Vaughn's laugh was without humor. "Don't play games, Blackett. The girl took letters that could be misinterpreted by those without context. I want them back before she does something foolish with them." "Like show them to the sheriff," Kara said, stepping out from the kitchen doorway. She held her head high, refusing to show fear despite the rapid beating of her heart. Vaughn's expression darkened. "You little fool. Do you know who you're dealing with? The men named in those letters have more power in their little fingers than this entire backwater town." "Maybe so," Jake said, moving out from behind the bar to stand beside Kara. "But they're not here and Sheriff Kennedy is. He's already sent telegrams to Denver, Vaughn. Your game is up." For a moment, rage contorted Vaughn's features. Then, with visible effort, he composed himself. "Very well, if that's how you want to play it." He adjusted his expensive jacket. "I had hoped to resolve this amicably, but you leave me no choice." One of his companions shifted, revealing the bulge of a pistol beneath his coat. "Think carefully about your next move," Jake warned, his hand now openly resting on his own gun. "This isn't Denver, Vaughn. Out here, threatening folks doesn't end well for men like you." Something in Jake's tone, the quiet certainty, the underlying danger, seemed to give Vaughn pause. After a tense moment, he inclined his head slightly. "This isn't over," he said quietly. "Not by a long shot." He turned to leave, then paused in the doorway. Oh, and Blackett, you might want to check your storehouse tonight. Accidents happen so easily in wooden buildings. After they'd gone, Kara released a shaky breath. He's going to try to burn us out, she said. Jake nodded grimly. I'd bet on it. I'll speak to Kennedy, arrange for some men to watch the place tonight. He took her hands in his. Are you all right? I'm scared, Kara admitted. Not for myself, but for you, for the saloon. Vaughn doesn't make idle threats. Neither do I, Jake replied, his voice hardening. And I swear to you, Kara, I won't let him hurt you or take this place. Matt's legacy, our future there worth fighting for, our future. The words sent warmth spreading through her despite her fear. What should we do now? Open for business, Jake said with determined cheerfulness. Show Vaughn and everyone else that the Silver Dollar Saloon doesn't scare easily. And so they did. The evening proceeded as usual, though Jake stationed Timmy Jenkins at the back door with instructions to watch for any suspicious activity around the storehouse. Sheriff Kennedy and his deputy made frequent passes by the saloon, their presence a reassuring sight. Near closing time, as the last patrons were finishing their drinks, a commotion outside drew everyone's attention. Shouts and the sound of running feet preceded Timmy bursting through the back door. Mr. Blackett, they're at the storehouse. Two men with lanterns. Jake was moving before the boy finished speaking, shouting for someone to fetch the sheriff as he grabbed his shotgun from behind the bar. Kara was only steps behind him, ignoring his command to stay inside. The storehouse stood 20 yards behind the saloon, a wooden structure where they kept extra supplies and liquor. In the moonlight, Kara could make out two figures attempting to force the door open. One held a lantern that cast eerie shadows across the yard. That's far enough. Jake called out, raising his shotgun. Step away from that door. The figures froze, then one made a sudden movement, drawing a pistol. Jake fired a warning shot over their heads, the sound shattering the night air. Next one won't miss, he warned. Shouts from the street announced the arrival of Sheriff Kennedy and several townsmen. The would-be arsonists, seeing themselves outnumbered, abandoned their task and fled into the darkness beyond the yard. Kennedy and two others gave chase while the rest secured the storehouse. Lantern oil all over the door, reported one of the men examining the structure. Another few minutes and they'd have had it ablaze. Jake's arm came around Kara's shoulders, drawing her against his side. You all right? He asked softly. She nodded, though she couldn't quite stop trembling. Will they catch them? Even if they do, they're just hired hands, Jake replied grimly. It's Vaughn we need to worry about. They didn't have long to wait. Sheriff Kennedy returned an hour later, his expression thunderous. Caught one of them, he announced. Young fellow, not much more than a boy. Sang like a canary once I got him in a cell, admitted Vaughn paid them to burn you out. Do you have enough to arrest Vaughn now? Kara asked hopefully. Kennedy nodded. Between those letters, and the telegrams I received from Denver this afternoon confirming some of the corruption allegations, I'd say so. I'm heading to the hotel now. I'm coming with you, Jake said firmly. Kennedy looked as though he might argue, then shrugged. Might as well. Just leave that shotgun here, Blackett. We're doing this legal-like. Jake handed the weapon to Timmy with instructions to escort Kara back to the saloon and stay with her until he returned. Despite her protests that she could take care of herself, Kara was secretly relieved not to be alone. The wait seemed interminable. Kara paced the empty saloon, jumping at every sound from outside. Timmy sat nervously by the door, clearly trying to project more confidence than his 16 years warranted. It was nearly dawn when they heard footsteps on the boardwalk. The door swung open to reveal Jake, looking exhausted but satisfied. Vaughn's in custody, he announced. Along with his two remaining henchmen. They tried to slip out the back of the hotel, had horses saddled and waiting. Kara hurried to his side. What happens now? Kennedy's holding them for the federal marshal. Those letters implicate government officials, that makes it federal business. Jake ran a hand through his hair. It's over, Kara. Vaughn's finished. The relief that washed over her was so intense she felt her knees weaken. Jake caught her, his arms strong around her waist. "Hey," he said softly, concern in his eyes. "You all right?" "Just tired," she assured him, "and relieved, and—" She looked up at him, her heart in her eyes. "Grateful you were here, that you believed in me." Jake's expression softened. "How could I not?" he murmured, bending to brush his lips against hers. "You're the strongest woman I've ever met." Timmy cleared his throat awkwardly from nearby. Should I go now, Mr. Blackett?" Jake chuckled against Kara's lips. "Yes, Timmy, and thank you for your help tonight. Take tomorrow off with pay." After the boy had gone, Jake and Kara stood in the center of the quiet saloon, arms still around each other. "We should probably get some rest," Jake said, though he made no move to release her. "Probably," Kara agreed, equally reluctant to end their embrace. Jake's eyes searched hers. "Stay with me?" he asked softly. "Just to sleep," he added quickly. "I don't think I could bear to let you out of my sight tonight." Kara's answer was to take his hand and lead him toward the stairs to his rooms. They climbed together in comfortable silence, both too exhausted for words but finding solace in each other's presence. Jake's quarters were simply furnished but comfortable, with a large bed that dominated the main room. He helped Kara with the buttons at the back of her dress with gentle fingers, his touch respectful despite the intimacy of the moment. She removed only her outer garments, keeping on her chemise and petticoat as she slipped beneath the covers. Jake stripped down to his long underwear and joined her, his arm coming around her as she nestled against his chest. "I never thought I'd find peace again after Matt died," Jake murmured into her hair. "Felt like part of me was buried with him." Kara traced patterns on his chest with her fingertips. "And now I remember what it's like to have something to live for," he replied simply. "Someone to live for." They fell asleep wrapped in each other's arms, the first rays of dawn painting the room with golden light. The next few weeks passed in a blur of activity. News of Vaughn's arrest spread quickly through Gunnison, bringing a flood of curious customers to the Silver Dollar. The saloon thrived, its reputation enhanced by the drama surrounding it. Jake and Kara worked side by side, their partnership deepening into something neither had expected to find. The federal marshal arrived to transport Vaughn and his men to Denver for trial. Before leaving, he visited the saloon to thank Jake and Kara personally for their assistance. "Those letters you preserved have blown the lid off a corruption scandal that reaches all the way to Washington," he told them. "Railroad commissioners, land office officials. Vaughn had half the territorial government in his pocket. Will he go to prison?" Kara asked, still unable to fully believe her former employer could no longer harm her. "Count on it," the marshal assured her, along with several officials. The legitimate railroad interests are already distancing themselves from the whole mess, appointing new representatives to handle their business in Colorado. After the marshal departed, Jake pulled Kara into a celebratory embrace. "Hear that? You're free of him for good." She smiled up at him, joy bubbling through her veins. "We both are." That evening, after closing, Jake surprised her with a bottle of champagne he'd been saving for a special occasion. They sat together on the small balcony outside his rooms, watching the stars emerge over the mountains. "I've been thinking," Jake said after a comfortable silence, "about the future." Kara turned to look at him, her heart quickening at his serious tone. "Oh, the bank's impressed with how we've turned the place around. Offered to extend the loan for Matt's expansion plans if we still want to pursue them." He took her hand in his. "Hotel rooms upstairs, proper dining room down here. It could be something special." Kara asked softly. Jake's eyes held her steadily. "I was hoping." "That is, I'd like you to be more than just an employee, Kara, more than just—" He gestured between them. "Whatever this beautiful thing between us is becoming." "What are you asking, Jake?" Her voice was barely above a whisper. He set down his champagne glass and took both her hands in his. "I'm asking if you'd consider becoming my wife, my partner in every sense." His thumbs traced circles on her palms. "I know it's fast, and God knows I'm not the easiest man to live with, but I love you, Kara Vale, more than I thought possible after losing Matt." Joy burst through Kara's chest like sunshine through clouds. "Yes," she said simply. "Yes, I'll marry you, Jake Blackett." His smile was radiant as he drew her into his arms, his kiss tender and full of promise. When they parted, he pressed his forehead to hers. "Matt sent you to me, I think. His last gift to his wayward brother." "I think perhaps we found each other because we both needed healing," Kara replied softly, "and a place to belong." "The Silver Dollar," Jake murmured, "our home." They were married 2 weeks later in a simple ceremony at the town church. Sheriff Kennedy standing as Jake's best man and Beth Wilson as Kara's maid of honor. The entire town turned out for the celebration afterward at the saloon, toasting the couple who had overcome grief, threats, and danger to find love. As summer turned to fall, the expansion of the Silver Dollar proceeded according to Matthew's original plans. 6 comfortable hotel rooms were added to the upper floor, while the main level was extended to include a proper dining room. Jake and Kara moved into the largest of the new rooms, creating a suite for themselves that overlooked the mountains. By Christmas, the Silver Dollar Hotel and Saloon was the pride of Gunnison, hosting not only the usual miners and cowboys, but also travelers brought by the newly completed railroad line built, to everyone's satisfaction, along a route that bypassed the town center and left both the Silver Dollar and Miller's ranch undisturbed. On Christmas Eve, as snow fell gently outside, Jake and Kara stood together in the crowded saloon, watching their patrons celebrate the holiday. The piano Matt had purchased played cheerful tunes, the bar gleamed with polish, and the air smelled of pine boughs and cinnamon. "Matt would have loved this," Jake said, his arm around Kara's waist, seeing his dream fully realized. "He's here in spirit," Kara replied, leaning into her husband's embrace. "In every detail you've so lovingly preserved and enhanced." Jake pressed a kiss to her temple. "I have something for you, an early Christmas gift." He led her to their private quarters and presented her with a small, carefully wrapped package. Inside lay a silver locket on a delicate chain. "Open it," he urged. Kara did, finding a tiny photograph of Jake on one side. The other held a lock of dark hair. "Is this?" "Matt's," Jake confirmed. "I saved it after we laid him to rest. Thought you might want to keep him close since he's the reason we found each other." Tears welled in Kara's eyes as she fastened the locket around her neck. "It's perfect," she whispered, rising on tiptoes to kiss him. As they held each other close, Kara felt the slight roundness of her belly press against Jake, their secret joy, not yet shared with anyone else. In spring, a new Blackett would join their family, continuing the legacy that Matthew had begun and that she and Jake now carried forward together. "Merry Christmas, Mrs. Blackett," Jake murmured against her lips. "Merry Christmas, my love," she replied, her heart full to bursting with the happiness she'd found in this once broken man and the saloon that had brought them together. From grief had come healing. From loss had come love. And from one brother's final legacy had bloomed a future brighter than either of them could have imagined on that dust-blown day, when Kara Vale had first turned the key in the door of the Silver Dollar Saloon. In the years that followed, the Silver Dollar Hotel and Saloon became known as the finest establishment between Denver and Salt Lake City. Jake and Kara welcomed 2 children, Matthew Jacob Blackett, born in the spring of 1886, and Emma Rose Blackett, who arrived 2 years later. The family lived in the expanded suite above the saloon, the children growing up amid the bustle of the business their parents had built together. Jake never forgot his brother, keeping Matthew's memory alive through stories told to his children, and the annual toast raised on the anniversary of his passing. But the crushing grief that had once threatened to destroy him had been transformed into a gentle remembrance, tempered by the joy he found in his new family. Kara, too, found healing in Gunnison. The fear that had driven her from Denver faded with time, replaced by the confidence that came from building a successful business and raising her children in a community that respected and valued her. In 1890, when the children were old enough to travel, Jake and Kara took their first extended trip away from the Silver Dollar, leaving it in the capable hands of Beth Wilson, who had risen to become their assistant manager. They journeyed to Kansas City, where Kara visited her parents' graves and made peace with her past. Upon their return to Gunnison, they expanded the Silver Dollar once more, adding a small theater where traveling shows could perform. The venture proved so successful that by 1895, the Silver Dollar was the cultural heart of the growing town. Through all the changes and growth, Jake and Kara remained devoted partners, their love deepening with each passing year. The saloon that had once been a symbol of Jake's grief became instead a testament to the healing power of love and the unexpected ways in which broken hearts can be mended. And on quiet evenings, when the children were asleep and the last patrons had departed, they would sometimes stand together on their balcony, watching the stars shine over the mountains, grateful for the twist of fate that had brought a grieving cowboy and a woman seeking refuge together in a dusty saloon that became their sanctuary and their home.